Hello, everyone, and welcome to the download from 24 IT Services. We've got another brilliant show lined up for today with a really brilliant guest from the local business community. I suppose I best change my cap before we start on this. Bear with me. There we go. Let's change over to our co-host for today, which is Mark Taylor, the CEO of Automated Analytics. How are you doing today, Mark?
Really good, and thank you so much for having me on, AJ. I appreciate it. That hat definitely suits you. I think you need to wear it more often. Although I never realised you didn't have any hair.
Yes,
I was when you did the
no
switch.
hair.
Whoa!
I have to wear the
Didn't
cap.
realise
It's a
that.
public service because otherwise I just
It's
reflect.
it's a public service. Yeah, I much prefer you in that hat, AJ. Definitely works for you. Definitely works for you. And just in case anybody's wondering, we are actually in the same room, by the way.
Yes, we are. The other side of my monitor. Eventually, I'll get it up so we can actually sit just opposite each other on a desk. But for now, we have it set up so we're sat in the same room, and I've got another microphone and set up so that Mark can see basically what you guys can see as well, actually. But thank you very much for joining me today. Let's kind of dive into our first news story for today, which is 16 billion credentials have been leaked online in the mother of all data breaches, which includes usernames, emails, passwords, contact information, and more, as part of 30 different exposed data sets. This includes information for Apple accounts, Facebook, Google, Amazon, GitHub, Telegram, and many, many more. Cybercriminals are able to use these types of information to be able to brute force their way into accounts for people who reuse passwords across multiple services and don't use services such as multi-factor authentication or newer passkeys and things like that. Of course, for those who've been following along on mine and the 24 IT socials, we always talk about the one password, one service structure where no passwords are repeated. And we advise people to use password managers with additional encryption on top of additional account sign-in, facial recognition and things like that, as well as further authentication. And also to not really use SMS authentication, which is the most vulnerable form of multi-factor authentication. I suppose the talking point on this, with the recent rise in cyber attacks on UK businesses, for those who don't know, the cyber attacks on UK businesses increased from 2.39 million only a couple of years ago to 8.58 million last year. Mark, do you feel that your online accounts are secure from these common but also modern cyber threats? And I suppose more importantly, as a senior executive, do you feel that you could be the target of whale phishing attacks as these attacks become more common?
So I think the first things first is, and my CTO Ben will be delighted for me to tell you that I have access to nothing. I think first off, that's the best strategy to deploy is don't give me access to anything, and then I can't mess it up. It's interesting. So a lot of these stories come out, and I think sometimes we become very vanilla to them. You know, we when you talk about that, my immediate response to these, ouch.
Yeah.
And that's a big data breach. And certainly for myself in terms of 2FA, or as you say, facial recognition, I'm adding that to pretty much everything I've got access to, because I think the danger is use the same password for everything called limited passwords, and that in itself is not best practice at all. No. And particularly if I'm a user of Apple products, you've got facial recognition built in, you go with a pass key. And so, for example, we got a new Xbox in the office yesterday because the other one had gone kaput. FIFA is a big talking point in the office. Apparently, there's a new FIFA, which is even better. So, and I particularly like it when, sorry, we're going off piece, but I particularly like it when it's Aston Villa versus Birmingham City. Obviously, I'm Aston Villa. But even setting that account up, we've got facial recognition, so it can't be hacked, and I think you've got to protect yourself, and I think there's going to be more and more of these, and people are getting more and more sophisticated in how they connect and get data. In some ways, there's part of me that admires how sophisticated that these crooks are becoming, but it's the annoyance, and you've got to make sure you're protected. And my father, for example, I recently got him a new iPhone, a new iPad, and making sure that facial recognition was all over it, making sure his passwords were complex and that he was using proper storage. And you've got to take those steps, because the last thing you want to do is be compromised. And yes, in the UK, we are protected from a banking point of view. In France, you're not.
No.
And so, I met a lady earlier on in the year who unfortunately had €8,000 taken out of her account. Nothing she could do about it, unfortunately. And again, it's things like that. Is we are reasonably well protected in the UK,
Yeah.
but you think further afield, you're not, and you need to be very, very mindful and very aware of that.
Yeah, it's scary times, especially for people who, like you say, maybe the elderly or people who aren't as tech savvy, who are just naturally more vulnerable to these types of things. It's making sure that people are educated
Yes.
and making sure that people understand at least the basics of how they can keep themselves safe online is very important. I mean, I did a talk with Harrison College not too long ago, where I went in and I spoke with the students about simple ways to be able to spot phishing attacks, simple ways to be able to stay safe online. And it's not just the elderly that need to be aware of these things. Sometimes it's like I'm trying to educate my son as he's growing up as to how he can stay safe online as well. And yeah, as these become more complex and increase, then it's more important than ever that people have the right tools in place to keep themselves protected. I mean,
Definitely.
just looking at things like the recent M&S cyber attack, for example, how the cyber criminals were able to get in by resetting a senior person's password by calling up their support provider. It's scary. There needs to be those extra processes in place, especially for businesses.
Yeah, and you're only as good as your weakest link. And funny enough, I was with the organisation that looks after the Ministry of Defence's network yesterday.
Yeah.
And one of the questions I had was, okay, so if you're attacked, what can you do about it? And their response was, not much really.
Yeah.
But it's about making sure that you aren't compromised to begin with. And it's learning and implementing new stuff and making yourself more secure. Our CTO Ben is brilliant at this type of stuff, and he's a real asset to our business when it comes to security. And he's taught me a lot. And I think where I say 27001 regulated because I wanted to run a business that was secure.
Yeah.
And steps that we now go through compared to when I started up our business are quite a bit different because of that framework, and it's made us a better business. And I think people just got to be mindful, and there is that danger that you get an email and you open it straight away with, whoa, okay, let's just check it first. Does it look suspicious or not? Because as you say, there are a lot of phishing style attacks, and certainly it's interesting because a lot of cyber stuff is moving towards, and I was witnessing yesterday, wiping machines, so causing disruption, not necessarily using data to steal or take money, but actually wipe a system, so it causes you disruption. And very, very interesting how things are developing. So yeah, absolutely, you've got to be savvy. Absolutely, you've got to operate in terms of, okay, so could this compromise me?
Yeah, no, definitely. I suppose this also kind of brings us into our second news story of today, of like extra steps that businesses can put in place to keep themselves safe from evolving threats. Where a North Korea hacking group known as Blue Noroff, I think that's how you say that, have been named in connection with a new AI deepfake attack. This is where the hacking group has sent out a series of Calendly links which redirected users to a fake Zoom domain for meetings, and when the employee joined the meeting, looked to be a Zoom meeting with convincing deepfakes of senior leadership people within their company as well as external contacts. However, when the employee was joining this, they would be told, oh, your microphone's not working. Here's the link for the latest Zoom extension for your microphone. However, that then turns out to be malware or ransomware designed to infect the user's systems and then also spread to their larger business infrastructure. As AI deepfake attacks become more convincing, especially with tools such as Google VO, V3 specifically of Google VO, and AI video and audio generation tools that are coming from other providers on the market. Do you feel that the average consumer could spot an AI deepfake of another employee within their business?
It's an interesting question. So we're reasonably good at spotting it. I mean, again, it's making sure it's got correct English and it looks right. And again, same with the imagery that people use is does it look right? But then, as AI gets more and more sophisticated, more and more accurate, I think you're going to have a challenge, and I certainly think it's one of the biggest risks moving forward. And unfortunately, that's the downside I think of AI,
Yeah.
which is why we really need regulation, but the right type of regulation,
Yeah.
not regulation that kind of stops growth innovation. But if you've got you're purporting to say it's North Korea, but if it really is them to start with,
Yeah.
how do you guard against that? And again, it's making sure that whatever your weakest link is not as weak, and learning from that. I mean,
Yeah.
at Automate Analytics, we're reviewing things on a weekly basis. We have a Monday morning meeting that talks specifically about risks within the business, and something we brought in some time ago. But it's an ever changing world at the end of the day. And you've got to keep on top of these, and you've got to take it very, very
Of
seriously.
course.
I remember when email first came out. Yes, I am that old. And phishing. What's that? I don't think it was even a phrase that was invented by the
Yeah.
time when I first had email back. I think in about 2001. So you've got to keep updated with it, and I think that's along with firewalls. That's
Yeah.
along with spotting stuff, and just making sure that you're set up to be safe. You can't always be 100%, but mitigating those risks, in my opinion.
Even just having those internal processes. So like
Yes.
a process that we have internally, for example, for any of our customers phoning in, is that each person has a unique passphrase that's for them on their account, that if they ever need to reset their password, they have to quote that unique passphrase. And as soon as they reset that password, they're given a new unique passphrase for if they ever need to do that again in the future. Of course, then you have the challenge of making sure that people remember the passphrases, but also we have additional steps with that of making sure that a senior member of team within that business is also told, okay, this user is wanting to reset their password, can you give authorization? It's those extra steps more than anything. I mean, what was it, like a year ago, 2 years ago, there was, I believe it was a Chinese company who, a similar deepfake attack where a member of the finance team had been convinced to be able to transact, I believe it was about the equivalent of £25 million as part of a number of transactions out into a cyber criminal's banking accounts, all through AI deepfakes from a senior executive that had been taken from videos of when they'd been speaking at conferences and things like that. But like for those types of transactions, having that extra step of verification, say, okay, yes, we need to say for this sort of thing, we'll say, okay, there needs to be a passphrase, or local multi-factor authentication, for example, where two people have mirrored codes or something like that. Having those extra processes in place to be able to protect against these evolving attacks is needed now more than ever, I suppose.
Definitely, and I think it might feel like a faff.
Yeah.
But actually, it's those steps that you now need to take, and you need to take it very, very seriously. No, I very much agree with you, AJ.
Definitely, definitely. Now, let's move on to the third news story for this week, which is kind of interesting for our local area, although it may not seem so at first glance. So, Amazon this past week announced that it would be investing £40 billion, creating thousands of jobs as it looks to expand its warehouse network, but most importantly, its artificial intelligence infrastructure as part of its efforts to bulk up its e-commerce and cloud operations. Inside baseball for today, I actually ordered a new microphone from Amazon that was supposed to arrive yesterday and hasn't arrived. So Mark's using one of my old microphones.
Well, maybe so that 40 billion is going to go towards your microphone arriving on time.
If they can get it there on time, it'd be much better.
So I think this is a massive opportunity for the UK. I think we need to have more investment. I mean, let's be honest, with the way the government is and what the Labour Party have inherited, there isn't pots of gold in central government. There aren't, and so for me, it's getting inbound investment into the UK, and I believe it's a UK issue. Interesting enough, the whole reason for the Labour Party announcing the AI growth zones was to make growth zones in the UK favourable for international investment. We're going for one in Doncaster. And this is not about investment into Doncaster per se. It's about getting international investment in the UK, and that Doncaster is favourable and attractive. And the thing about AWS is we work with them. They've got a very very good, AI development platform, and we've worked with them as partners for a number of years. They've been very supportive of us, and it's good to see an organisation of that size. I mean,
Yeah.
interesting enough, we're doing the ground break of Gateway One, which is
Yeah.
part of the AI Growth Zone application. We're doing that. I think it's later on July 17th of July, and we've got Nvidia. We've got Google, we've got AWS. We've got Microsoft all coming because, again, potential investment opportunity for Doncaster from those businesses if it gets that growth zone status. Because that growth zone status will not only put Doncaster on the map and signal it as a place for investment in the UK, but hopefully the tax breaks that will foster that investment into Doncaster. And hopefully Amazon of that 40 billion are going to be considering Doncaster. They've already got a good footprint here in their warehouses.
Yeah.
But great for them to bring up some of their development from London and elsewhere in Surrey back up to South Yorkshire. Would be great. I think,
Exactly.
and it's a sign, I think, of Doncaster is very famous for engineering, for the steam industry and being part of that industrial revolution. For Doncaster to be part of that new age industrial revolution, which is AI, I just think it's a great opportunity for Doncaster and one that I'm very proud to be part of.
Really, really brilliant opportunity, and it's great to see that people such as yourselves doing such really good work in the local area promoting the AI growth zone, as well as being a part of things like the new tech and digital hub that's coming into the city centre as well, and all of the opportunities that will bring to the local region too. And it would be brilliant to be able to bring people like Amazon and other businesses from around the world into our local area as part of our hopeful AI growth zone, and just see us become this kind of hub in the middle of the UK, which we have really good transport routes for getting people into here for artificial intelligence and the like. So it'd be
totally, AJ. And I think the unique thing about Doncaster is we have the power. What's limiting the UK at the moment is infrastructure.
Yeah.
So to run an AI server farm, you need power, a lot of it. Doncaster is very fortunate that we've got 1.4 gigawatts. I know I sound like Dr. Emmett Brown of Back to the Future. But we've got more than the bolt of lightning that is going to be at the Thorpe Marsh site, 1.4 gigawatts, so we can meet the government's requirement for 500 megawatts of power for a service station 3 years before the deadline, if you get what I mean. So I think we've got a great opportunity. But I think what's impressed me most about Doncaster, as you can tell from my accent, I came here 15 years ago, to be with my kids, and what's really impressed me is you've got Damien Allen, who's the CEO of Doncaster. You've got Mayor Ros, you've got Sally Jameson, our local MP, and you've got Dan Felt. All of them have worked tirelessly to help us drive, even just get us on the list for an AI growth zone. And I have to thank them, because without their help and support, and they really do have a can-do attitude. And I think that's one of the things I'm really proud of, my adopted home of South Yorkshire, is the can-do attitude. And also the South Yorkshire Mayoral Authority, Joseph, who has been super supportive in helping us, get the application across the line. And really, by the way, I don't know if we call Dan Fell Sir Dan because he's just got an OBE. Or he has a 10-gun salute everywhere he walks. He's got his OBE. But he challenged me very much probably 2 years ago. When I first met him, I'd come back from America. I was very jet lagged. It was a rainy Monday morning in Doncaster at Cast in July, thinking, why am I here? I was doing a talk on behalf of Sheffield University because I have a relationship with them. And, I said that we were Doncaster's best kept secret. And Dan quite rightly challenged me and said, well, don't be. You need to talk it up. And Rosie was our MP then, said the same thing as Mark. You need to talk up Doncaster, and that's really the mission I'm on, which is why I went to the President's inauguration in January to represent Doncaster, because no one else was going. I don't think anybody else from South Yorkshire went, and I wanted to go because I want to put Doncaster on the map. Why not? We've got this power opportunity. We've got huge opportunities in front of us. And you've got to go out and get it. No one's just going to hand it to you. You've got to go and get it. And I think, without Dan's support, certainly from the Chamber, which amazing organisation. Why everybody in Doncaster is a member, I don't know, because they really have helped us. But Sally, Damien, Roz, they've all been massive supporters of what I'm trying to do, which is really put Doncaster on the map for AI.
Yeah, and like I said, I admire your efforts and everything that you're doing for that. And we have such a brilliant local business community in Doncaster.
Yep.
Part of the reasons why we decided to become headline sponsor for this year's Business Awards is to kind of give back to that local business community and to say, look, we want to celebrate the amazing accomplishments of so many great local businesses and the work that people behind the scenes, like you say, Doncaster Chamber, Doncaster Council are doing.
Yep.
And yeah, it's the least that we could do to be able to give back, and I suppose we just wish we could do a little bit more sometimes.
No, and that dinner is amazing, by the way. I mean, the first time I went to it, which was about maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I went to it. I mean, I think there's about 1,500 people go to it at the racecourse, and literally the entire business community of Doncaster gets together. It's almost like the end of year Christmas party.
Yeah.
But it's great to see the number of businesses that get recognition, because I think, when you run a business, it can be sometimes a lonely experience, because as CEO you can't chat about everything to your staff. There's got to be a line, and so therefore to meet people that are in have the same challenge or struggles. It's how we met you guys, to be fair. I mean our offices are only 5 minutes apart, depending on how quickly you drive, obviously sticking to the speed limit. But we met through the chamber, and you've been super supportive of driving that AI growth zone for the UK. It's been great to actually pull together, if you like, the AI industry of Doncaster, which is now 23 companies from the likes of Thales, which are the large French organisation that got offices here, to us, to some startups. And it's been great to get that industry together almost as a subset of the chamber. And it's great to see the impact that we're having. And I think I committed at a chamber event almost 12 months ago, we're going to go for this. We're going to put Doncaster, on the AI map, and I believe we've got a real chance in front of us. Fingers crossed. I think the decision gets made in September after the summer recess at Parliament. So we've got all the ingredients to make Doncaster a success with AI.
And we've already done so much to get Doncaster on the map, and it's about continuing that now going forward.
Yeah, very much so.
I'll move into our last news story for today, and this is kind of one that's kind of been a year in the making, really. So Windows Recall, for anyone who might remember this, was announced about a year ago, where it would take screenshots of a user's screen every few seconds, and users would be able to then use Microsoft Copilot to recall that information for websites, documents, even pictures and more besides. When it was first introduced, cybersecurity researchers immediately found the unencrypted folder that it was writing to and were able to manually search through and export all of the screenshots, really secure as it is. It was something that a cyber security or cyber criminal novice, that's probably the best way of wording it, could have been able to automate in seconds. It was so scary that there weren't more thought put into it. Now, though, Microsoft is relaunching Windows Recall, and it's encrypted now on the local machine using BitLocker, even Windows Hello facial recognition. It's now no longer available to other administrators on the same machine, which it was previously. And it's not allowing screenshots to be easily viewed, even by the user, just by changing the file extension. But now, additionally, Windows Recall is now opt-in by default. Previously, when it was in preview, it was opt-out by default. And even now, many third-party applications are now implementing restrictions for screenshots and preventing Recall from being able to take screenshots when their apps are open. I suppose for this topic, though, would you feel comfortable, whether it's Windows, whether it's a third-party application or anything like that, would you feel comfortable with an application recording all of the information that's on your screen at all times, even if it was just for the convenience of being able to recall information when you maybe forget about something? I forget about stuff all the time when I'm working. I've got that many plates that I'm spinning at different times, but especially with things like sensitive information in emails or Teams or WhatsApp, pictures that you receive, or just websites like banking information and financial information. Would you feel comfortable, even with them saying it's now more secure, any application recording information on your screen at all times?
No, because I'm a CEO.
Yeah.
And there's certain things, that I don't want seen because there's conversation I have to have, or emails I have to send that are a sensitive nature. And anybody in a senior role, CEO, CFO, you won't want that screen grabbed, is what I see. Now, in terms of my internet history, you'll suddenly see that when I wake up in the morning, I read the Times newspaper, the Daily Mail, check my emails, check my bank account, go to the BBC, sports gossip, see who Aston Villa aren't buying today. And then go on my bike and do 15k around France in my garage on a turbo trainer. So, I don't lead that an interesting life that people are going to suddenly find something else about, but it's the footprint, the electronic footprint that you leave behind. Anything electronic, in theory, can be seen, and for me, the sensitive information that I wouldn't want seen. And once it's out there, and you have the same challenge with, anything you put into Chat GPT, essentially a copy is being made, and then that is in the Chat GPT model. So we have a policy and regulation that in terms of we limit use of Chat GPT in our business, because anything sensitive, we don't want a copy of that going into the Chat GPT model, for example. And again, I think, again, this kind of it's almost opting you in to begin with. I think it's quite dangerous. I am also one of these people that will not accept all cookies when I land on a website. I also exactly, but and I also switch off my microphone off Facebook Messenger, because I know that when I have that live, the adverts that appear on Facebook miraculously mirror something I might have said.
Oh yeah,
when the microphone's open,
even though they don't record information.
Of course not. Of course not.
Of course.
Of course not. Never accuse Facebook of doing that. Of course not. But
Amazon Alexa is just as bad for it, I think.
Exactly, but I think the challenge is and this the thing is one, I think it gives an incredible amount of user data to Microsoft. How are they going to use that? I don't know. Taking a record of every screenshot, you really need that. There's always a back button on your browser. There is a bit of browsing history, so you can go and find that. For me, I'd firmly be opting out, and as a company policy, we'd be doing the same thing as well. We wouldn't allow any of our employees to opt into that.
Yes, I mean, thankfully now it's opt-in by default, so it's going to be opted out for everyone. And it's only for compatible computers as well, so it's only for computers capable of Windows 11 AI, which at the moment is the Snapdragon ones, or any of the newer, more powerful GPU laptops that are coming to market. But it's something that we have a policy for already in the business, where we have this turned off by default, and we don't actually allow for it to be turned on, only because we're dealing with sensitive information for thousands of users across 16 different countries. Like, we do not want their information being recorded at all.
Correct. And even with messaging on Snapchat, when it dissolves, if someone takes a screenshot, it's never not gone, if you get what I mean. And that's what worries me about Microsoft taking screenshots of your computer. I really would give that a second thought, rather than just as you say, opt in. Absolutely, AJ.
Exactly. But this kind of brings us perfectly into our 24 tech tips topic of the day. That's too many T's. I keep thinking I should reduce that. Where we're talking now about the hidden risks of third-party AI. You spoke about having company policies of not being able to do certain things with ChatGPT. We have the same. We don't allow users to be able to upload anything to third-party AI solutions. But there are many businesses that don't have these policies in place. And it's likely that people within businesses who are listening to this podcast right now, or businesses throughout the UK, employees are using solutions such as ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and others to be able to do a variety of different things. This could be to just generate ideas, or it could be to create a draft of an email on a particular subject, or even just sentiment analysis of an email before they send it. So a lot of these are probably relatively low risk depending on the information that's in there. However, in all likelihood, the big people in your businesses are using these tools to generate much more than these simple examples. They could be uploading spreadsheets or documents or other data and asking for summaries or reports to be generated as part of this. In these scenarios, employees could be uploading potentially sensitive data such as financial records, sales information, purchase history, or even HR information, which is really scary. But the problem being is that by default, tools like ChatGPT, the data that's provided them are used to be able to train their models to improve. And whilst the user who is uploading that information, their information is anonymized, the content that you're uploading to these platforms is not. And industry experts are now referring to this as a take everything and sort it out later approach. And most users don't even know that the information that they're providing is being used to train these models, and also that it can even be turned off. I mean, back in, I think it was 2023, there was a glitch in ChatGPT that caused users to be able to see people's replies and conversation histories of other users. I mean, thankfully, this was patched very quickly, but it goes to show that the data that's being shared and the outputs from those can be potentially misused if placed into the wrong hands. I mean, I think the figure is that about 50% of UK businesses last year experienced some form of cybersecurity breach. And these included things like third-party supply chain attacks, or even an internal breach, whether it's intentional or otherwise, uploading data to the wrong platform or missending it to the wrong person on email. I mean, as we spoke about previously, as humans, we are the weakest link in any cybersecurity strategy. And if these models are being used to be able to train the data you provide them, could that be used by cyber criminals, or could it be used by competitors even, to be able to gain vital insight into other businesses in their industry? I mean, when I hear about people uploading documents into things like ChatGPT, I'm very wary of saying, just be very careful of the information that you upload. It's all fun, like posting a photo of yourself that's been generated through AI. It's a little bit of fun at the end of the day, but as soon as you start providing it sensitive information,
I agree. So there's two bits I want to pick up on that you've mentioned, which I think are quite important. So the first thing is a company's AI policy, right?
Yes.
For me, it starts with, what are you as a business comfortable with?
Yeah.
So there is a FTSE 500 company that contacted me a couple of months ago, and they'd allowed their staff to use ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But they hadn't put a policy behind it.
Yeah.
And they were concerned that there was a senior member of the team literally doing their entire job through ChatGPT, which wasn't proved, but there was suspicion. Well, hang on a second. You've allowed that person to use ChatGPT. So where's the policy that says, well, you can use it for this, you can't use it for this? So I think the first thing is where, where do you feel comfortable? If someone literally lives their life through ChatGPT to do their job, well, one, what sensitive information are they pushing up there? You're absolutely right. But two, if they can do the job through using ChatGPT, well, do you need that person? Do you need that role?
Yeah.
It brings up a whole myriad of issues, which again goes back to your AI policy. What are you comfortable with?
Yeah.
And so for me, the next bit of AI, the bit you mentioned, which was the model, that to me is the next arms race when it comes to AI, is model accuracy.
Yeah.
So there is an app that was being used by an African country that you'd put your symptoms in and it would predict whether you had malaria or not. Now, it was less than 50% accurate. So the likelihood is, AJ, that if we were using that app today to predict if you or I had malaria, which I don't think either of us have, one of us is likely to have malaria based on the accuracy of that model. And
Google Doctor.
Exactly. And what's interesting about AI is obviously the more you push into ChatGPT or any model, it's learning. So, for example, we created our own transcription engine because the error rate of what was on the market was too high, 30-40% error rate in taking a telephone call and transcripting it into language, text, if you like. Our model runs at 95% accuracy. It's got the lowest word error rate of any transcription engine that's available, commercially today. And we often get approached by people, oh, we can make your model better. We're already running 95%. How are you going to do that? And this morning we're at I think 96.8% on what we're looking at. So now it's about making that AI as accurate as possible. And there was some research that was done earlier in the year on various different models that were out there. Google was at 70, AWS was slightly lower, OpenAI was slightly higher, but getting it to run in the 90s, in the 90s of accuracy, is really where I see AI getting to, and that's when you'll get something that is mega accurate. And that's what worries me at the moment with AIs, is if you're not reviewing, and we call it a supervised model, or it's called a supervised model. Even if you write something in ChatGPT, if you literally copy and paste that and stick it straight in without looking at it, without correcting it, that's a supervised model, the definition of a supervised model. You'd be crazy to do that, because it won't be 100% accurate. It'll get more and more accurate over time. But, I've used it to write the odd letter, the odd email, but I've topped and tailed it. I've changed a few things to put it in my own style, my own language, but it still saved me 2 hours of my time from writing that email, that letter in the first place. So it's been useful. But again, as you say, be careful what you're putting into these models, because you're basically giving them a copy of whatever it is that you're inputting that someone else potentially could access if they ask exactly the same question. And so, if you're using it to check code, essentially what you are doing is giving your code to be checked. And if that's real sensitive code, you really want that going into someone else's AI model,
being trained for someone else to use.
And it's interesting, because I also get asked the question, why did you develop your own large language model? Why didn't you base it off someone else's accuracy? I can get more accuracy developing my own model. And the challenge that you're always going to have is when you've got a large model like a ChatGPT. For what we needed it to do, it was never going to be as accurate as we could make it ourselves. And so you've got a lot of people that are trying to work with other people's large language models, wondering why the accuracy isn't there. You've got to go create your own. And that, to me, is the adaptation, I think, of AI is we're using other people's models. It's now a case of developing those specifically for, we develop them specifically for clients, or for different sectors to do the analysis that we do, and the real-time automated analysis that we do. That, to me, is the next stage, I think, of AI development, to get that accuracy moving forward, because a generalist large language model won't be as effective as something that's very specialist for that industry category, or whatever you're trying to solve.
And I suppose the other thing to consider, as well, when it comes to the use of third-party AI tools, especially when people are potentially feeding it sensitive information, is the compliance with things like Cyber Essentials and ISO 27001. And as you were speaking about, businesses having their own AI policy, it's not just important for that, but it's making sure that it's part of their overall data policies as a whole, and how it links into their cybersecurity policies, and making sure that people have things like the privilege identity access management as part of the policy of least privilege access. You don't want Debbie in HR accessing John in sales' information. John in sales doesn't need access to Nigel in accounts' information. It's about making sure that businesses securely silo their data within different departments, and that when they're using internal models, I mean, just think of something like Microsoft Copilot, for example. If they're using tools such as that, you want to make sure that only the people who are using those tools can access the information that they need to do their job effectively, and that they couldn't then potentially be the source of a data breach for accessing HR or accounts information and things like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, we understand that third-party AI solutions can offer innovative capabilities. I mean, they're regularly being updated, but they also introduce that significant risk along with it as well. And when it comes to customer and client data privacy and integrity, it's important that people take these sorts of things into consideration.
Totally. And I think when it comes to AI, is that you should really treat it just like you do with GDPR and data. You should have, like, you have a data officer within your organization, you have a framework, you have a committee. AI, in my mind, should be no different. And we launched the Codes of Practice last year at the House of Parliament in December. And one of the big things...
It was a brilliant event, that, by the way.
Thank you.
Brilliant event.
One of the things that we suggested was that you should have, essentially within our Codes of Practice and an AI governance team, someone that has overall responsibility, a committee, so that, any AI you're using gets properly vetted and approved, and it just doesn't seep into your organization. Just like you wouldn't allow them to download, any software whatsoever onto their
Yeah.
work laptop. Most laptops nowadays are locked down as they
Yeah.
should be for security reasons. AI should be no different, and you should be very aware of, right, what is our policy if something's new coming. For me, it's about the ethics. Should we be doing it? Should we be using it?
Yeah.
Is it ethically right? Do we ethically want to be associated with this? Then it's about the accuracy of the model, because going back to our malaria app
Yeah.
diagnosis,
Yeah.
it's less than 50% accurate. Ethically, should be doing that. That accuracy is defining that ethically, and should you be using an app to define a medical condition unsupervised?
Yeah.
There's a lot of, and what I find fascinating about the medical industry is that there are a number of AI solutions that will guide a doctor to get to a diagnosis faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the overall decision is still made by the doctor, which I think is a good
Yeah.
definition and a good framework to work to.
Definitely.
Even if you're in business, it's understand the limitations, the risks with ChatGPT, but set clear frameworks and approve it as a business.
Yeah.
Which is what an AI, if you like, governing body within your organization will do. We have
Yeah.
it. Ben, our CTO, heads that up. So
Yeah.
and it makes a big difference. And we, being an AI company ourselves, we are very, very cautious about the AI tools that we allow our staff to use.
Yeah, especially with the type of data that your business
Yep.
holds and has access to. I suppose another question leading on from this then, and it kind of links into where we're talking about AI governance as a whole. Do we feel that there should be more stringent or strict, I wouldn't say restrictions, but policies placed on specifically small to medium-sized businesses who may not have cybersecurity or data protection practices already in place to protect user data, regardless of whether it's from uploading to third-party AI solutions, but more so that we're keeping end users or other businesses protected from evolving threats that are coming into the market?
So interesting enough, I think every business, large or small, should be doing cyber essentials.
Yeah. We
And
agree.
and years ago when I first set up our business, from my kitchen table, I learned so much by going through things like cyber essentials. ISO 27001. You got to set up your business to succeed at the end of the day, and I think that security side of things, absolutely, you now have to do, which you didn't have to do even 10 years ago, if you get what I mean. And so for me, it really is, being risk averse when it comes to security data and very much AI. I mean, again, we developed our own transcription engine because we wanted it to be more secure. It automatically takes out personal identifiable information. You can even choose what information it takes out, which again is not available on the marketplace, because we wanted to make it more secure and a better solution for
Purpose built
businesses
for
at the
what
end of the day.
you need.
Yeah,
it
no,
for,
totally, and it's been a really interesting journey developing that, and so for me, as a business owner, my daughter works at a hairdresser in town. She trains as a stylist.
Yeah.
She works at Blow in town, and she's also qualified as an L Tech. And she just started work at a salon doing an L Tech. Even those businesses need to be very aware, because they're promoting through the internet, they're promoting on Facebook, on TikTok, on Insta, and again, you can have phishing attacks, you can have security threats come through those channels as well.
Yeah, or even just malvertising. Like we've seen a
Absolutely.
massive increase in that in recent years.
Absolutely, and so for me, it really is, and that's why we developed the framework. Was guys, I think with regulation of AI, it's a difficult job for the government. I really do think it is, because it's evolving very, very quickly. But when you get Elton John calling Peter Kyle a moron, and funny enough, Peter Kyle is, as I discovered, the Minister for Science and Technology, is dyslexic, like me. And so I understand why he called him that. I understand he was frustrated.
Yeah.
But the copyright issue is a very, very interesting. It's not just in terms of music, it's everything. If you're uploading something into ChatGPT, who owns the copyright to that?
Yeah.
Who owns the copyright that ChatGPT, whatever they use that you've put in that they then create for you, who owns the copyright of that? It's not just music, it's code, it's letters, it's images, and that really does need to be defined, because as a music artist, you know, if someone samples my work and uses it and changes one note, I should get a royalty for that. I mean, you
Yeah.
know, just look at Sting. I think he gets $2,000 a day from P Diddy for sampling
Yeah.
his music, and Elton John's got the, you know, got a really good point. It should be opt in. If some people don't mind their music being sampled, fine, but
Yeah.
it should be carte blanche. And that for me is anybody's data, anybody's assets they're putting into AI. You really do need to think about that copyright issue and who owns the copyright,
Yeah.
because I think that's probably going to be one of the biggest challenges that AI is going to face.
Yeah.
And the regulation behind it is nailing that copyright element, you know, fully, so that people understand, and it defines who the copyright stands with.
Yeah, especially as now tools such as like Google VO and OpenAI's version, I forget the name of it now. It's only available in the US, I think, at the moment, isn't it? But these video tools are then being used to generate video that replicates someone else's style, or even just, I don't know, creating a photo of yourself as a Simpsons character or something like that.
Yeah.
If businesses are then using these as part of their promotional tools,
Yep.
like, that copyright shouldn't really exist with that business. I mean, there is a reason why Disney now owns Simpsons, because it's a recognizable brand around the world, and they wanted to own that brand and that copyright. And it's like, it's a slippery slope. And like you say, I think there needs to be more guidance and governance around these sorts of things.
And protection, because I totally understand, you know, from an artist's point of view, and I'm thinking it from a music writer or even a painter, you know, that's their livelihood that you're playing with, and they need to have protection, and again, make the choice themselves. Do I want my work to be copied or not? And I think giving people that option, absolutely, you know,
definitely,
it's going to be fundamental, I think. And I think that is the challenge, and I think the debate is still going on. We you know, Lord Ranger, I've got to know over the past couple of months. We went to inauguration together, and he's very well versed in the House of Lords, and I think the House of Lords understand AI more because they can get very specialist. So the House of Commons is somewhere away from really understanding, you know, what needs to be done, and you know, thank God we've got the two houses, because they can debate it, and I'm sure they will come up with the right framework. But I still think there's a bit of difference between the House of Lords and the House of Commons, and what the actual regulation needs to be.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Well, now's the time of the show where I like to kind of spotlight our guests for each week. So today, of course, we've got Mark on from Automated Analytics. And Mark, you kind of alluded to it before. You started your business, you kind of like the perfect example of the kitchen startup. What was it, like 12 years ago now, roughly?
Yes,
something like that?
Just about, yeah.
And you're now servicing more than 4,000 clients around the world. People like Pizza Hut, KFC, Dino Rod, and many, many, many more. I mean, for those who haven't heard your story before, can you tell us a little bit more about the history of your business?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it started many years ago. So I was marketing director of Hilton Hotels, and they were a fantastic employer to work for. I had two bosses, a guy called John Phillip and a guy called Hugh Taylor. And Hilton made me, they sent me to Lausanne Business School. They really invested in me, and I was very lucky to have that investment. But I always remember when I had my one-to-one with Hugh, and he says, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to run my own business." And he says, "Well, you're in the wrong business. You know, you need to go. You need to go and set something up." So I then went to Virgin, was in marketing there, and then I got into private equity, and I loved being in private equity. So it was Nationwide Auto Centres. They're now known as Halfords Auto Centres. We sold them to Halfords, actually. I joined the management team, Duncan, Bill and Andy, midway through the investment. And they taught me how to run a business. I mean, it was a great experience for me. But the thing with private equity, when you've got an investor, they want you to succeed. It's all about growth. And myself and I hired a colleague, Matt Robbins. We grew the website from, I think, doing 6 million to 18 million in 12 months. And I remember being sat in an auto centre, and you know, the phone rang and the centre manager picked it up, you know, yeah, good morning. And I could hear the conversation. The guy was saying, "Look, I'm on your website. There's no slots available for me to book an MOT. You know, can you book me in?" And quite right, the centre manager booked them in, and I immediately sat there thinking, "Oh my God, that's revenue that I'm missing." And when you're in marketing, I think half your job is proving that your marketing works. I mean, AJ, you're a marketing manager.
Yes.
I think half your battle, I probably would guess about half your time is creating reports to prove that, you know, your Facebook campaigns work, your Google Ads campaigns work. And for me, because I was bonused on revenue coming from the website, I'm thinking that's half my bonus walking out the door.
Yeah.
And we sold nationwide auto centres to Halfords very successfully. David Ward, who was then CEO of Halfords, wanted me to stay on, but I then got involved in another private equity venture, which was Esporta Health Clubs.
Yeah.
Ended up selling those to my previous colleagues at Virgin. Again, joined the management team there. Had a boss, John Cleland, and again did a similar thing with a website. Turned it into a revenue generating website, which Esporta hadn't had before. And he'd come from a supermarket background, and it was just said to me, Mark, the work you do is amazing. You just need to productize it into a piece of software almost. And it was when I went on, it was called the Marketing Forum, which back in 2013 was on a boat. So if you could imagine, I thought I'm on this boat for 24 hours. It was actually 3 days.
Oh God.
So I had to phone up my ex-partner and tell her, look, I know you thought I'd be home on Friday. I'm actually not coming home until Saturday. So you can imagine how she responded to that. Not best pleased. And I was literally on this boat thinking, I've got 20 or 30 meetings with suppliers, and they are really good events. I mean, we go to them now. But to meet clients. But the funny thing about it was I was on this boat, and you moored up 2 miles outside of Guernsey, and I'm thinking, is the drop going to kill me or the swim to the shore going to kill me? Anyway, I ended up actually meeting my angel investor, a guy called Neil Campbell, who has turned into become a great friend, almost like my brother almost. And I sat down and said to him, look, the challenge I've got is attributing marketing clicks to offline sales. I've got an idea for a business. And he said, well, what's stopping you? And I literally, I think in the morning, on Saturday morning, was the first person off the boat, sprinted to my car, drove to Newbury McDonald's, the one that's just off the A34, the services bit. Ordered a McDonald's breakfast because I was healthy back in the day. Phoned up my then partner and said I'm quitting my job on Monday, and she thought I was mad. I thought I was absolutely mad because I was walking out of a very well paid job, an insurance services company in Norwich. But I was just tired of the commute. I didn't want to do it anymore. Set up what's become automated analytics, and pretty much spent the first couple of years trying to attribute online clicks to offline sales, whether that's the phone line, whether it's chat, online chat, whatever. And it was getting to a stage where we were employing people to listen to phone calls. So if I take DNload, which is one of our clients, 80% of their sales come via the phone line. Unless you listen to every single call, how are you going to know that Google click that led to that phone call that that generated what, unless you listen to the call? And I was employing teams of calls, and there was a lady that was working for me at the time, and I said, she wanted to go part-time, and I said, well, why don't you go and work in account management? I don't want to listen to calls every day. It's mind-numbing. And that's when I realized that my business had a scalability problem. And so we'd at the time, I'd got to know Richard Harpin from HomeServe. I got introduced to him. He loved what we did. And he was looking to make an investment, so I knew I had something. But we needed to automate a lot of the stuff that we did to make it more profitable. And so I was in Benidorm, the posh bit, the old town. And you'll see Benidorm keeps coming back, by the way. But I was there, and I can tell you the cafe, I can tell you the table, I can show you the napkin where I wrote our first algorithm. I then phoned our then CTO and said, look, is there a way that we can record the call, transcribe the call, and then classify based on the contents of the call what actually happened, and automate that whole call listening process essentially? And within a week we got a model up and running, and it just transformed our business. Because if I take Dino, we were able to double their website revenue within 3 months by being able to analyze 80% of their revenue as to which keyword was driving it on Google. And it was so transformative for us. And it was funny because that attribution problem isn't just a marketing issue, it's a sales issue, particularly when you're talking about outbound calls. So if you've got an outbound call center or outbound sales team, what are they saying on the call? How successful are those conversions? So if you're running, form fills on your website and then need an outbound call, well, how can you connect the keywords, generate that form fill with that outbound call? Well, we do that automatically. And then we go into recruitment, because a lot of people are saying, look, it's brilliant, you're generating loads of revenue, but we're running out of staff. I'm being an entrepreneurial person. I'll find you some staff. And so we created Talent Track, which is what we launched in the States. So again, it's an analytics and an attribution solution that essentially tracks every application through to hire. application gets made online, and then you hire it offline. You
Yeah.
interview the person, you either phone them or you meet them face to face, and so that being able to properly attribute where your applications, where they come from and which ones end up in hiring, means that you can get rid of your advertising wastage. And
Yeah.
throughout my entire career, it's finding those advertising channels that work versus the ones that don't.
Yeah.
And that has really been, as a marketing director, one of my biggest challenges, which is why I created automated analytics, was to solve that. Okay,
Yeah.
I know half my marketing works, but which half does work? And it's been a real journey. It's not been easy. It's not been easy. I'm sure my kids will attest to that, because there's been times when we've been on holiday, and I remember my daughter saying, shh, dad's on a call, to my son Josh, who we adopted 11 years ago. I'm very proud of.
Yeah.
And so it's been a sacrifice for the entire family at points, but taking the business to America. So if starting on my kitchen table in Sprotborough, I'm a resident of Sprotborough, fair enough, where Harrison College started as well, actually.
Yeah.
Big supporter of Gemma and Harrison College. And then taking it to America. We planned for 20 clients, and it was 2 years ago, just gone actually, that we set up in the States, and we were planning for 20 clients. And I'm at home on the kitchen table because it was nice sunny afternoon. I thought, right, we're going live in America. It's going to be a long night, trying to get 20 clients. I'll go home. So I'm sat home, and we've got a report that tells us how many registrations we'd had. Anyway, the email had gone out. We partnered with a company called Fourth, who are the largest supplier of quick service restaurant software in the US.
Yeah.
They sent an email inviting their clients to use our software. I'd refreshed the report within a minute of it going out. I think we had about 50 clients. I'm thinking, no, it's broken. It's broken. It's users.
Can't
It's
be
users.
right.
It can't be clients. Can't be clients. And Ben, our CTO, is actually based in Asia. So,
Yeah.
it's like his, I think when I called him, it was his 7 or 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Like, Ben, report's broken, not happy, report's broken. He says, no, mate, it's not broken. I said, what do you mean? He says, refresh it. And it's like, 120. And I'm thinking, this is 5 minutes, 120 clients. So part of me is like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then once it got to, I think by 5 o'clock, I think it was about 4:35, we got to like 1,000 client registrations. At that point, the gin and tonic was brought out. I thought, God, okay, I need a drink.
This is why you want that gin bar, isn't
but
it?
exactly. When the realization came in, oh my God, just billing alone, if you get what I mean. And one of the interesting things in America is they still use checks.
Yeah.
Electronic transactions are not as prevalent over in the UK as they are. America is slightly behind with its financial services offering, and just the having and at the end of the weekend, I think we got about 2,500-3,000 clients registered, and it was just being able to set it up. And I literally, I think on the Monday, got on the plane. Jason Peacock, who's our CEO, does a fantastic job in America for us. He and I just bunkered down and right, we need an office, we need staff, we need to do, we need to service these clients. And it was a real interesting journey, and probably the first time I'd ever taken a business international. Although I worked for Hilton, we got hotels around the world. I was predominantly responsible for the UK.
Yeah.
And it was just a fascinating experience. And even my chairman Bill James, who's done he's been a brilliant chairman for us. Even his support and like how we're going to do this, and it's been a great journey. It hasn't come without its challenges, as you can imagine, scaling that quickly.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But we've also been backed by an amazing private equity company, Maven. Very, very supportive of us. Bill Nixon, who's the CEO, he's been a great fan of ours, and they've helped us scale. I mean, I think at first they're a little bit unsure as well. Will America really work or not? Let's hedge our bets a bit. But once they saw it working, they've been a fantastic partner of us. And funny enough, I literally have just come off a board meeting with Jenny and Simon, and they're fantastic people to work with at Maven. I'd recommend them to anybody as a financial partner. And really, we've learned a lot from our America experience. We brought some things that we've learned in America, we brought back to the UK. And so we will be looking, to springboard. We've got clients live in Germany and Poland. We're looking at France at the moment. We will be looking at the Middle East. Obviously, probably not the right time to visit the Middle East right now, but I'm sure things will quieten down. And so for us, it's getting that, if you like, that global footprint, all from Doncaster. And this is what I say to people, the first question I always get asked is why Doncaster? My response is why not? We're an hour and 30 minutes, hour and 40 minutes from
Yeah.
London. It's actually quicker for me to get in London than when I used to live in Henley on Thames.
Yeah.
There's great will and skill in the area. I believe there's a good AI community that's being developed, and the icing on the cake is the AI growth zone.
Yeah.
But if we don't get it, it's not going to stop us.
Oh no, definitely not.
We've Gateway One is already being built, and we will get investors in, but the icing on the cake will be the AI growth zone, so that when someone says why Doncaster, we're in our growth zone. It just answers the question straight away. And I also want the AI industry to grow here, because if I can do this, others hopefully will get the motivation and will do it themselves, because I take a lot of pride on supporting people. I was at a tech conference at Cast, which is a brilliant theatre
Yeah.
that we've got here in Doncaster, and I think there's about 200 people. I said to everybody, look, if you want to contact me afterwards, I'm more than happy to help. And several people have reached out, and I get a lot of motivation from helping
Yeah.
others, because I think we're all part of an ecosystem. And my greatest asset is my colleagues at the end of the day, and hiring more good quality people to join our business is what it's
Yeah.
all about. And if there's a community of AI startups and mature companies and those in between, it'll only help that industry grow here. And I want to give opportunity. I always remember my nephew Colby, when he came and did his work experience with us. The deal was he'd do 2 weeks work experience, and he had to go back to school. He never went back to school. He joined us,
Yeah.
and he turned around to me and said, look, my choices are I go and work in a call centre or go and work in a warehouse." Giving people more choice in Doncaster, that's why we have an apprentice program,
Yeah.
because I want to give people more choice. It can't just be those two, which great industries if that's what you want to go into, but giving people a wider range of choice in Doncaster rather than having to go to Sheffield or Leeds.
Yeah.
Let's give them that opportunity. And Colby's doing a great job. He's in the marketing team at Jet2, and he's doing very well. I'm delighted that I contributed to his journey.
Brilliant. No, I say we're exactly the same. We try to promote employing locally as much as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a couple of apprentices who've just finished their apprenticeship course. We're looking for more apprentices, I think, at the moment. We've just employed our own AI developer as well, who's sat actually on the other side of this wall, as part of our innovations that we're doing in our space. In fact, Tony, my CTO, was asked to speak on some industry panels this past week because of the work that we're doing with AI and automation within the IT and cybersecurity space that actually puts us apart from many other businesses in this space. And we were asked to speak about that work that we're doing at the moment. I'll not go too far into it because it's a little bit, I wouldn't say industry secrets, but it's still in development at the moment. But
Oh, sounds exciting.
yeah, it's
intriguing.
very, very exciting, and it's going to kind of change the game a little bit for the IT support industry, and we're looking forward to seeing how that goes. But it's about finding that local talent, finding those local people that you can kind of upskill and develop, and we're proud to be a part of that. And it's great to see that there's other businesses like yourselves locally who are supporting that kind of Doncaster is great mentality. That's probably the best way I can put
it. And funny enough, I think you were at an event yesterday with the Chamber of Commerce where they were talking about Made in Doncaster, which I think we need, logo it, call it what you want. We're putting that on our website, say Made in Doncaster. I'm very proud of that fact. And we have a great team in Doncaster. Whilst we've got offices in Asia and in America, our heartbeat will always be Doncaster. I want it to be, because one, it's where it's my kids' home at the end of the day. It's my adopted home. But two, because I want to give back, if that makes sense. And I think with the opportunities that we have, I said at the start, you've got to go out and take it. I have less sympathy for people. Why aren't people coming to me? Why aren't people? They're not going to. You've got to go out and get it. And hopefully the AI community in Doncaster is a light of showing, a way of showing that go out and get it. At the end of the day, if we don't get the growth zone, we're still going to do this anyway. But it would be the icing on the cake, and it'd be great for South Yorkshire to get that growth zone status. Not fingers crossed we'll get it. But no, I totally agree. It's about the investment. I'm very lucky in the fact that I've got some great people that work for us. Sophie, Adam, Josh, Luke, Dan, Becky. They're all local. We still have employee number one, Anis,
Yeah.
who's an ex-Googler who helped us up the business from the start, and I'm very proud that he's still with us as employee number one. And we're going to look to obviously employ more. We always, even down to, we have a Doncaster first procurement strategy. So if I can buy whatever services or product that we need, we always buy it from Doncaster first.
Yeah.
Even the Xbox that we bought yesterday,
Yeah.
bought from Doncaster business. So well, I'm a bit worried that whilst this is going on, everybody at the office is probably playing on FIFA at the moment. So
you're missing out on a game at the moment.
Exactly. But for me, it's because as part of a business owner, you want your business to develop. It is about giving people that opportunity, in my opinion.
And it's reasons like this why you guys won Innovator of the Year at the last year's Business Awards. So
very, very proud moment for me, because you let's be honest with you, you want to get recognition as a business owner. You do, because you put your life and soul into it. And this is my baby. Whether Ruby and Joshy like it, this is my third child at the end of the day. They sacrifice almost as much as me. They have for their brother or sister. But for me, the winning the innovation award. It's funny. A member of staff said to me, "I've never seen you look this happy." I wish I hadn't drunk as much champagne as I did before I went on stage.
Yeah.
But Duran Duran, Hungry Like the Wolf, it's my it's my Friday night banger. Always gets me going. And when I played that, when I walked on stage, it was actually quite emotional for me, because and I realise I'm an emotional person. But it was very emotional for me to get that recognition, and also I saw it as a massive thank you to the staff, because they worked tirelessly for me. I am reasonably demanding, as I'm sure one or two of them might admit to, but because I want the best, and I want them to perform at their best. So fingers crossed, we're up for a few awards this year, but win, lose or draw, we'll still be there enjoying ourselves, because it's just a great event, and
really great
the Chamber
event.
do a really good job. I'm super impressed. As I've been a member of I've moved around the UK, so I've had exposure to different chambers, but Doncaster did a damn good job.
Yeah, and I say we're proud to be a part of it this year. I say headline sponsors, large business of the year category sponsors as well. So
does that mean AJ the champagne's on you this year? Sponsor.
I suppose we're paid for it in some way.
Everybody. He's not denied it. He's not denied it. So.
Well, speaking of having a drink, though, I don't want to let the show run too long, but do you want to have a quick talk about the new tech AI digital hub and maybe the gym bar that you wanted to put?
So Gateway One. So Gateway One. So the story behind Gateway One is quite an interesting one. So the first time I met Damien Allen, I was at a Team Doncaster meeting. Now, one of the things that Doncaster is very good at doing is putting all stakeholders together in a room. So you've got the chamber, you've got the council, you've got the NHS, you've got the police, you've got everybody, politicians, everybody. It's all part of this thing called they call it Team Doncaster.
Yes.
And I again did a bit of an intro as to who I was and the business, and Damien came and seeked me out, and what impresses me about Damien is that he, as a CEO of the council, it's a tough job. He's got to be a front man. But the good news is he has a very good person behind him called Lee Tillman as his number two. And the way the two of them work together, it's I'm very, very impressed. And I'd heard about Gateway One, and I'd said to him, why are you just going to do it as offices? Why don't we make it a tech zone? And why don't we make it, a showcase for AI? Because we're an AI business.
Exactly.
And I don't even think it took any convincing. It was literally the quickest 15-minute meeting. And then literally, I think it was about 3 or 4 days later, we were in Parliament. We do a yearly event to take Doncaster to Westminster every year. And he came down and I gave him a slot, and I'd very cheekily changed or put our logo on the artist impression of the building.
I remember this story. Damien's told me this
we wanted to be tenant number one, and he took it in good jest. But what I like about Damien and Lee is they're very receptive to ideas.
And
once they get it, they're fully behind it. And so for me, Gateway One, I mean, you could already see the construction site already.
Yes, you can.
It's going to be, I think, quite an iconic building for Doncaster, particularly in that area, just outside the train station. And what it's going to offer is almost like a visual representation of the AI industry of Doncaster.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest with you, an AI server farm is a box. It's not going to look great, but Gateway 1 is going to be the only Grade A listed buildings,
Yeah.
Grade A listed offices in Doncaster. And funny enough, a couple of people have already asked me, well, if I'm not AI, can I still get in? And even down to, I want an incubator there.
Yeah.
So I want support for businesses that are looking to start up in Doncaster. Again, I'm offering free mentoring to those. But Damien has really been receptive, to ideas of how we can make that a tech hub. I mean, what's done really well is Barnsley. They've done a brilliant job of creating a tech hub there, and I
Yeah.
think envious eyes potentially have seen that and thought, right, well, can we do as good of, if not better, job? And the guys in Barnsley have done a fantastic job, and also Tech SY, I think have done an amazing job, and they should continue moving forward because I think they've done a lot to attract people into Yorkshire and that or
Yeah.
South Yorkshire, that tech hub anyway. And so for me, Gateway 1, I think we're doing the groundbreak, as I said, on the 17th of July. So even the contractor, Wilmot Dixon, the guy who's responsible for it, is local. And
Yeah.
I'm delighted he's from Doncaster because, for him himself to create such an iconic building, I think would be great. And yeah, our intention is that we're taking the top floor. There's a balcony, unfortunately, at the back of the building, not the front, at the back. And the great thing about Hilton Hotels was that the team ethic. And what I found fascinating was wherever you were in the world when you worked for Hilton, you had fish and chips on a Friday. So if you're in the
Yeah.
Maldives or if you were in Birmingham, wherever you were, you had fish and chip Friday, which it was just part of our team
Yeah.
culture. And so for me, what I wanted to do was on a Friday night, everybody to have their first drink on automated analytics. So respecting all faiths, we're going to be developing our own alcoholic and non-alcoholic gin.
Yeah.
And wherever you are in the world working for automated analytics, I'd like you to have your first drink on a Friday to celebrate your success of the week of working hard. Be with us. Hence why we will be installing a bar at Gateway 1. Be interested to see who knocks on the door at 4:30 on a Friday.
I've got a
But
feeling some
but
of our guys might come
but
round.
but it but it but it's but it's also to foster that networking opportunity,
Yeah.
which my angel investor Neil Campbell is the world's greatest networker in my
Yeah.
opinion, and the more networking you do, I think is good, and we need to foster that a
Yeah.
little bit more. And so for me, yes, it's a bit of an icon, hopefully, of the building, but also it's because I see our offices as much as event space as I do as
Yeah.
offices. We want to make sure that we are supporting that local AI
Yeah.
community in Doncaster and really living what we're saying we're going to do in the AI growth zone
Yeah.
submission by fostering that growth. Because what's really struck me about Doncaster is it's got one of the lowest average wages in the UK. Right, which is a frightening
Yeah.
fact. It's almost like 10 grand less than the average, which is frightening. Yet, if we can get tech companies investing in Doncaster, the average wage,
Yeah.
will go up undoubtedly. I mean, I think that building can house probably about 200 people
Yeah.
at full capacity. As an employer, we are paying much higher than on average, much higher than the average. National wage, way higher than the average wage in
Yeah.
Doncaster, and we're not a large, we're not a large organisation yet. So for me, the more investment we can get in, and having that Gateway 1 as really the focal point of the industry, I think really has put us on the map. And that's why I think, to some degree, there's a bit of pressure on the government to give us that AI growth zone status
Yeah.
because of the iconic things that we've already got or are going to have in the next 12 months that are really going to enable the Labour government to see Doncaster as a big success. So I'm super excited about it. For me personally, as a local business owner to be based there, I think it'll look great. Certainly, I think it's going to help us in attracting top
Yeah.
talent because you're going to be right outside the train station, literally 30 seconds
Yeah.
away.
Easy for people to be able to get to.
So commuting from Leeds or Sheffield or even Retford and down that way
Yeah.
and Grantham and Newark, it's going to be way easier because you're not going to have to worry about parking. You just jump on the train. So it'll open up, the employment opportunities, I think, a lot more. And I just think it's great for Doncaster at the end of the day, and the fact that Damien and Lee and Sally Jameson, our local MP, and Dan Fell, And Mayor Ross Jones, I was delighted that she got voted back in because she's been a big supporter of ours, and I
Oh,
didn't want to
definitely.
lose that that motivation, that impetus that we've got to develop Gateway One into that focal point for AI. So
Yeah.
and it it'll be very unique. There's not many other people in the UK that can say that they're going to have such a big focal point within their locality that's going to be focused on AI. So
Yeah.
no, really excited about it. I think even the hoardings go up next week,
All right.
which are going to kind of advertise more
Yeah.
about the hub and everything else. And then there's the groundbreak, I think, on the 17th
Yeah.
July, and I think we get access at the end of next year. It's quite a big scheme, but no, really looking forward to it.
Yeah. No, it's going to be absolutely brilliant space. I'm looking forward to seeing all of the developments as they come into the area. But thank you very much for joining me today. It's been absolutely brilliant to be able to hear your views on a range of different AI topics, but also to be able to share your story as well and the journey that you've been on this last 12 plus years, and what's in it for the future as well. Where we're taking things and what you're doing for the local business community is admirable. It's
Thank
absolutely
you.
brilliant,
I really,
and
that's very well. Firstly, thank you for having me on, AJ. I mean, you are the most active, I think, LinkedIn influencer I've ever seen in Doncaster. So even just get a mention from you, I know I've made it. I know I've made it. It's funny because I race go-karts on the weekend for
yeah,
an Italian team, or they're based in the UK, and somebody walked up to me and who I kind of know said to me, "Oh, I see that AJ mentioned you the other day on LinkedIn." I knew I made it. I knew I'd made. I knew got a degree of very little notoriety, but it did actually make me laugh as I was walking along. But no, thank you very much for inviting me on. And in terms of the future, we had a coder who used to work for us, and he always asked me a question. So when we hit this target, whatever it was, whether it's financial or retention, whatever, what we're going to do, we're going to keep going. We're not going to
yeah,
stop. And so for me, it's right. We've got a very successful business in America, made some real strides forwards. Right, where else is there
yeah.
to look at?
Where's the
Again,
next
is it
step?
Europe? Is it Middle
Yeah,
East? And that continual growth, and I'm lucky. I love what I do, and I've said this to my kids before. Find something you love, and the money will follow. Which,
yeah,
it sounds like my daughter has done, and I'm sure my son will do at some point. But when he's old enough, he's only 12.
yeah,
But it really is a case of I'm lucky that I love what I do, and that's why I find it very easy to put the effort in
yeah.
and drive the company forward like I do, because I love what I do.
Our MD Mike, he often says this: find something that you love to do, and you will never work a day in your life
Yep.
because you just enjoy every moment of it.
Which it's been said before, AJ. I don't think he owns the copyright on that,
No,
but he's absolutely right.
yeah,
And it's funny because I had a business partner in the early days. He wasn't in love with the business, and we went our separate ways after a year. And he's very successful in the video production industry, and because that's what he enjoys.
yeah,
And so no, I totally agree. And sometimes that opportunity doesn't present itself straight away. And I think sometimes people think, I'm at uni, I'm doing A-levels, I really should know what I want to do. Go try a bunch of different
yeah,
things. I was very lucky in the fact I had two very, very supportive parents who basically made me go out and work. So I had a paper round at 9, which I think might have been slightly illegal back in the day. I peeled potatoes in a chip shop. I was
yeah,
a chef. I ran my own PR company whilst I was at uni. I always had their support, and they were very loving parents. But try a few different things,
yeah.
because you'll be surprised at what actually drags you into something that you super enjoy.
Brilliant. Well, like I say, thank you very much for coming on to the show today. And I think we'll wrap it up there for this week. I hope everyone who has been able to tune in this week or is catching the show after the fact is having an absolutely brilliant week. Thank you very much for being a part of this journey, and hope to see you all soon. Catch you later.